Welcome to Crossover the Pond, brought to you by 21 Media Productions and Sports Social. He's Drew Lasker, I'm Josh Sexton, and this is episode 6 as we continue our NBA journey, a short, hezzy tween and stutter step away here in the UK. Drew, another crazy week in the NBA. They're all crazy weeks in the NBA, it feels like. How you doing? How have you been enjoying the basketball?
Man, you know what? The biggest thing that I've learned in covering the NBA this year, because before I became an analyst, I would always follow the NBA, follow box scores, highlights, here in the UK the next morning. But now, obviously, this is my job, so I have to cover it a little bit more intensely. And the biggest thing that jumped out to me, Josh, is if you miss 2 days, like you are completely lost. Like this, the season is crazy. It's 82 games. It's moving thick and fast, and you have to be on top of every single moment. You cannot miss out on a night because you are totally playing catch up and you are lost, man. You feel the same way?
Absolutely, yeah. It's like any big slate of games, especially that you miss. Like I was quite grateful for the Thanksgiving hiatus. I watched some
Yeah.
Thanksgiving football. I was just like feet up. Not like I'm not working tonight. This is my night off. I'm enjoying Thanksgiving the way it should be enjoyed, and no NBA basketball to think about. But then we were right back into the thick of it with Friday's slate of games after that. Well, me and Drew promised when we started the show that we would talk about every single team in the NBA. Last week, Drew, I hinted that we were close to having covered every single team at least once, which was a little pat on the back for us there. Whether in depth in the main body of the show or in dispatches in our understated stories or bold predictions. So I'm calling this bank of the next 3 episodes before Christmas. I don't know if we'll do 4, Drew. I'll kind of, we'll do some admin off air about that. But calling this next bank of 3 episodes at least cleaning the glass. Because I want us to have touched on every team before Christmas so that we can start the new year by either ranking or grading, however which way we want to take it, how each of the teams has performed so far. So, do you like the sound of that, Drew?
I mean, so translations for our listeners out there is he's basically forcing me to watch bad teams.
I like watching the Bill Simmons and Zach Lowe ranking the best League Pass teams, and I'm like, little do they know that me and Drew are over here in the UK watching all these teams, watching all these, even the bad ones, not just necessarily the League Pass A+ ranked ones. But as we know, Drew, we know it better than anybody. The NBA can be a fickle old place, and since we're both a day late in recording, and because the closer we get to Christmas, we want to spread more Christmas cheer. Of course, that's what the holidays are all about. We're going to start with the ugly Stepsisters out east. One of these is controversial, Drew, so you'll have to hear me out on this one. But
Okay.
the Brooklyn Nets, despite their win last night, the Charlotte Hornets, the Washington Wizards, despite their win last night as well. And, well, I mean, I was going to say I'm afraid, but then they went and lost to the Washington Wizards last night, even with Giannis back, the Milwaukee Bucks. So the way we'll do this is we'll break this down into one negative / pessimistic side of each of these franchises, and then we'll also try and give them reasons to be cheerful since it is the holiday season, as I mentioned. So, Drew, we'll start with the Brooklyn Nets, the winners last night against the Charlotte Hornets. I'm really enjoying every time there's like what NBA Twitter is calling an ass off between any of those losing teams at the bottom. The Clippers were involved in a couple of ass offs this week, which I
I
was going
haven't
to say I
heard
got to
that. I
enjoy.
love. I'm gonna have to add that to the vocabulary. That's tough.
Absolutely.
Ass offs. Yeah.
Yeah, I had to
Basically.
endure a couple of ass offs on the Clippers' behalf this week. But enough about those Clippers. I talk about them too much. They deserve more airtime from me. We'll continue on the Brooklyn Nets, and the pessimistic negative side of this, I guess, Drew, is like I look at the Brooklyn Nets franchise as a whole, and this is probably the most meta of all of these teams that I'm going to go in terms of like looking at the whole franchise, the most macro I'm going to go, because considering this is meant to be like the other half of a crosstown rivalry, and I remember when the Nets got KD and Kyrie and James Harden, and people were looking at us being like, oh, it's like this is going to be, Brooklyn Nets really like competing with the New York Knicks, and New York was just coming up into their thing as well as a real playoff team, have spent years in the kind of wilderness rebuilding, but the vibes in Brooklyn are absolutely horrible right now. Barclays Center is a cool arena that is never packed out for Nets games. I've been down there a couple of times. I went to the Nets versus the Pels, I think it was. last year, which I'm pretty sure turned out to be a Pelicans win. I got to watch Zion Williamson up close, which is always cool. Shout out to the New York Liberty, by the way, because they always fill up Barclays Center. I know they're also owned by Joe Tsai as well as the Brooklyn Nets, but it feels like the Nets are not too fond as a fan base of Joe Tsai. It feels like they don't go to Barclays Center for games. It just feels like the vibes, as I say, around this team, the support around this team is just not there. And I really feel for Nets fans, to be honest, especially those who've come from the New Jersey Nets days, Drew, because this is not a fun franchise to follow.
Yeah, I put the Nets and the Clippers pretty much in the same boat because these are the only two teams in the NBA that play in the same city. You got the New York Knicks, who are the big bros, and then you got the Brooklyn Nets, who are the little bro. And then when you look in California, you look in LA, you got the Lakers, who are the big bro, and then you got the Clippers. So these are two franchises that in their own city are kind of a second thought. And if you look at the trajectory of both of them over the last 10 years or so, they're two franchises that have really tried to rush the process and trying to buy themselves a championship. I mean, just look at Brooklyn over the last 10 years when they had the Paul Pierce and the KG era, right? Didn't really do much with that. That was when those two guys were at the end of their careers. Weren't able to build a fan base with those two. And then years later, they come in with Kyrie and KD and Harden, and you think, okay, here we go. But, those three barely even got on the court together. And they still weren't able to establish themselves in New York. So I think when you're these two franchises, and then you look at the Clippers and you see the same thing with Paul George and the current situation they have there with Kawhi and James Harden. And so for me, you have to have DNA within the franchise. And the way to build DNA is through birth, right? Is through the draft. And, that's where both of these franchises should really turn their focus. And when you look at their season, it looks like they're headed that direction anyway. And, for Brooklyn, it's just one of those teams that they're never going to be bigger or better or more popular than the Knicks. And so they have to create their own identity. Yes, winning solves that. But yeah, we're in this situation again. I mean, are you going to touch on the positive and negatives on these two teams?
Yeah, so I can take the positives from here.
Yeah,
So
go
I
ahead,
guess
go
the
ahead.
the, the
I'll,
biggest
jump.
positive is
Yeah, go ahead.
yeah, as you alluded to, really, is the draft capital. Like Michael Porter Jr. has proven himself to be a major coup this season. He's someone who I've heard on a lot of sort of podcasts and NBA analysts and things like that, people talking about him maybe attracting a contender that someone can pick him up before the deadline to give them a scoring boost. And it's a chance for the Nets to get more draft capital in. I mean, they already got Denver's 2032 first round pick in the trade that brought him to the team. I'm not sure where Denver will be by that time. You don't know where Nikola Jokic will be by that time, but given how good Nikola Jokic is right now, there's never any signs of slowing down with Jokic, even though he always goes at his own speed. And then Nick Claxton too is another one who seems to constantly be in trade rumors. I've seen really strong links with the Boston Celtics in recent times as well. The Nets own their own pick this year, so if they are, going to continue to be this bad team and not make a big swing, which is exactly what you'd imagine, then they've got the chance to go and do something in the draft this summer.
Yeah, and when I look at, both sides of the coin for this franchise, for me, the positives outweigh the negative. The only really negative for me that jumps out is we have to remember, and we can't sweep this under the carpet. They have 5 first round draft picks in the 2025 NBA draft. And they only got one player that's in the top 10 of the NBA rookie ladder, and that's Yagor Yoman. Other than that, I honestly can't even name the other ones. And so that's unfortunate, but it also tells you how important it is to get in that top three, right? Like you got to get within that top three of the lottery because that gives you the opportunity to draft, generational talent to NBA talent. That's the difference there. But, the positives that you mentioned there, Michael Porter Jr. is proven why he was the number one player in the nation as a high school player. He is a straight up bucket getter at 6'10", and he is creating a lot of value for that organization. He's obviously not a centerpiece, but he is a player that, I would assume that the Nets will flip later on for more draft capital, more assets. And the biggest positive that jumps out, firstly, their schedule. That was a big win for them last night against the Hornets, which were their first home win of the season. They were 0-9 before that, but they got a friendly schedule. They obviously had Charlotte last night. They got Chicago coming up on the road. They got Utah. They got New Orleans. So that's 4 games. You would like to think that they can grab 2 of those, maybe 3. But the biggest thing for me, and you didn't mention it, the biggest asset that they have is their head coach, Yordi Fernandez. I mean, just last night, Michael Porter Jr. just called him a genius. He said he loves the schemes that he draws up. And his respect level for him is just out of this world. And you've heard a lot of players and a lot of coaches speak highly of him. He is the Canadian national team head coach, and look what he's done for Team Canada. But I remember watching Brooklyn last year, and although they didn't get a lot of wins, but one thing that really stuck out is they play really, really hard and they compete. And in today's NBA, that is a skill. Like, just having players that can play hard, that can buy into what the coach is trying to deliver is an absolute steal. So this is a coach that is a coach for the future. And just imagine what he will do when he actually gets some talent there in Brooklyn.
Yeah, absolutely. Big shout out to Geordie and then to all the NBA coaches really who are making a lot out of a little, because there's some thankless tasks around the league. You look at some of the coaches even who are at the top end of the league now, like Mark Dagnall, and how he had to, stomach a big rebuild with the OKC Thunder, and it wasn't as many years really with the Thunder as some other coaches are going through. But big shout out to those coaches who are on rebuilding teams, because we're all competitive. That's the nature of this league, is that we're all competitive. We all want to win, of course. So the ones who are sticking it out and not winning in the meantime deserve a lot of respect, I think.
No
But
doubt.
speaking of teams who are not winning, Drew, the Charlotte Hornets, who lost in their ass off to the Brooklyn Nets last night. The negative, pessimistic side of this, I think, is more of a sort of optics thing for me as much as anything. Like, I'm never going to be a guy who is a fan of somebody like a Miles Bridges. Miles Bridges is currently the leading scorer on that team, and it's more for the off-court stuff with Miles Bridges that I'm not a fan of him as much as his game, really. But he's the leading scorer for that team, which I think as a franchise is not a great look when he's someone who, you cast away for a little while and brought back probably a little bit too quickly with everything that allegedly went on there. And then the vibes around LaMelo Ball this season seem really, really bad. There's, LeVar Ball doing all his talking in the media, as he's always want to do. He's trying to push LaMelo to the Clippers, it seems, which is interesting. Something I'm thinking a lot about these days, especially. But the vibes around LaMelo do seem bad, and that's your franchise player ultimately. They don't own their pick this season, which again is just like terrible optically for a franchise who are losing as badly as they are. They're going to get the worst pick out of Washington, Phoenix, or Memphis, which is looking like it'll probably be Phoenix, given how they've been on a bit of a roll this season. They may still end up being a lottery team if they lose in that play-in picture, which is where you'd assume Phoenix will end up. But to get the worst pick out of all those teams, if you're Charlotte, to have your franchise player effectively, flirting with other teams really and wanting out, and then to have your leading scorer be a guy who's had a world of off-court issues over the past few years. Again, Drew, just seems like a tough franchise to follow, the Charlotte Hornets at the moment.
Yeah, most definitely. If we do shed some light on them for our Charlotte Hornet listeners, they had won 3 in a row before losing last night. Brandon Miller is back after being out a month with a shoulder injury. Obviously, LaMelo is back now, but he's on a minute restriction. And I was really impressed what they did this weekend, because they got back-to-back wins against on Friday night, against the Bulls. And then we know how tough it is in the NBA to win on a back-to-back. And then they go into Toronto and beat the Raptors, who have been one of the most impressive teams in the league. And they do that, down 9 with 6 minutes to go with LaMelo, with Brandon Miller on the bench. And, that just, so that is the positives. And obviously, my love for for Knoepel. They're comparing him to a even better Klay Thompson. So, those are the positives. You mentioned with LaMelo, those are the negatives for me. Even though I just mentioned those positives, the LaMelo situation is the black cloud around this franchise because, the rumblings. Like, obviously, it was in the media that he had asked out or wasn't happy or whatever terminology you want to use. And then he came on Twitter and, responded with the clown emoji. But where there's smoke, there's fire. A lot of these beat writers, they're just not going to pull this out of thin air. And, someone like LaMelo, who, is incredibly talented, you question if he has winning intangibles, and we just haven't seen it yet. Like, this team has just been stuck in the middle, and that's my concern. Like, right now they're 6-15, and I was going to come on here and say that they have, they kind of want to be worse, but I didn't realize they didn't have their draft picks. So, what do you do? I think at this moment you got to hit the reset button. You got to go with Knoepel. You got to find what assets you can get with LaMelo, but they definitely need a restart.
Absolutely. I don't know if you saw this story that was going around recently on social media as well, Drew, but about LaMelo in the 2020 NBA draft when he did his interview with the Timberwolves is absolutely hilarious story where basically the reason the Timberwolves decided that he wasn't for them, and I don't think they even invited him back for workouts after that, was that they asked him like what he wants to be like off the court in terms of like a legacy he wants to leave, and he said he wanted to be the president of the United States.
That's cap. That's straight up cap. I wouldn't have drafted him either. And you know what that reminded me of? It reminded me of Gilbert Arenas during his draft process, during these interviews. I can't remember exactly. Oh, yeah, he said he wanted to be a pimp. And so that's why he fell to the second round. So, and it goes. It pretty much goes hand in hand with his personality, which you could describe as is immature, kind of fair when you describe LaMelo's personality. So that doesn't surprise me that he said that, but that's definitely cap.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, you've mentioned a couple of the things in the reasons to be cheerful there. And I guess to spin the LaMelo thing a different way, really, as much as LaMelo is a guy who clearly has massive potential. He's 24 years old, clearly has, a real, genuine future in the league. I don't know if he'll be like one of the, top stars that the league has to offer. Like, I don't know if he's got like Anthony Davis potential, for example. I think there's still too many questions around LaMelo really to put him in that same bracket as someone like Anthony or like a Cade Cunningham, for example. But he does still have a lot of potential, and I think teams will be looking at that, and there'll be some exciting trade possibilities for the Hornets, and something that could secure them some extra draft capital. We mentioned that they don't have their own pick this year, so maybe a chance if LaMelo does want out this season to secure that in trades. And then Con Apple, as you say, is a guy who it feels like they can absolutely hang their hat on. This guy is an absolute hooper, Drew. I had the pleasure or displeasure of watching him play against the Clippers. I think that was just last week, actually. He's currently leading the Kia rookie ladder, as you predicted on the show a couple of episodes ago, with 18.4 points per game on 47, 41, 90 splits, which, like,
Wow.
as a rookie to come into the league shooting that efficiently is absolutely incredible. And I think some people would have heard your Klay Thompson comparison then, and like with everything that Klay has achieved in the league. And I love that video that was going around recently of the I think it was one of the Heat rookies was going off on Klay, and then Caron Butler took the rookie over to Klay to be like, apologize to this guy, because this is a genuine like NBA legend. Like, this is a guy who will have his jersey retired with the Warriors, I'm sure, and all these kinds of things. So people would say like, what, Concanepo will be even better than Klay Thompson? But I think what you mean by that, and obviously you can clarify yourself, Drew, too, is that Con can handle the ball too. It's not like it's all off ball. This is a guy who can cut to the basket probably better than Klay ever could. Klay wasn't just a three-point shooter, of course. He had the defensive chops and, underrated ball handling abilities and an ability to cut to the basket. But it feels like Con is a guy who has, so much in his arsenal. So there's a lot to be excited about there, really, for the Hornets. And, even if you are going to get off LaMelo and secure yourself some draft capital there, whatever you can go and draft, you've got your blueprint with Concaneppel there. Like I was thinking about the Nets before, and the Nets have drafted so badly. Like you referenced all those draft picks last year. Like if I was a Nets fan, having my own draft pick almost wouldn't excite me because the sort of higher ups at the franchise have not drafted well. Whereas with Charlotte, you've got literal recent evidence that they have drafted really well there.
Yeah, Kanapa, he what impresses me about him is three things: is that his movement without the ball, his shot making ability, and his IQ. And those are skill sets that you can plug and play in with any personnel on any team. That's why for me, I would turn the clock and build around him. I'm curious to get your thoughts on LaMelo because if you look at everything that surrounds him, he's 6'7". He's a point guard. He's this new age point guard who can make shots. So what is it from your perspective that's not resonating in regards with LaMelo of why he's not that guy?
I think his mentality, like that's always been the biggest question with Lamelo. Like that anecdote, I think it was John Krasinski that shared that on stage with Zach Lowe a couple of weeks ago. That Lamelo anecdote. So it's coming from like legitimate sources about like wanting to be the president, and I think it's that like. I don't know, like I don't want to come on here and like disparage anyone, but there's definitely a LeVar Ball attitude that you feel like resonates with Lamelo that doesn't necessarily with Lonzo. Like I feel like Lonzo is the kid of that family, and obviously there's Leangelo who sort of kicks around in the background as well, turned his hand to music and has done a much better job than he did in the NBA there really. But Lonzo feels like to me the one who has like that real NBA head on his shoulders, and that to me translates into how Lonzo is a good two-way player. Obviously he's had his injury issues, which has been a shame for him really, but like Lonzo, yeah, I don't think it's a mistake that he's the best defender because he's the one who knows the most what it takes or is the most switched on to what it takes to be like, I know what it takes to make it in the NBA. I know it's hard work. I know it's a defensive mindset that sets the foundation for everything you do offensively. And I think LaMelo, the reason he's probably not been considered a plus defender really, even on a bad team like the Charlotte Hornets, is because he doesn't have that mentality.
Yeah, you hit the nail on the head. If you put Lonzo's head on LaMelo's body, you have a superstar.
Exactly.
And if you compare the two, LaMelo is much more talented than Lonzo, but Lonzo has many more intangibles that translate to winning basketball in the NBA.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, we'll move on to our next ugly stepsister, another one who got a win last night in the Washington Wizards. They previously had the worst record in the league. I've had to scratch that off the agenda because their win last night means that they only have the worst record in the East now. The Pelicans technically have a worse record in terms of percentage, the same amount of wins as the Pelicans with just 3 though, and arguably in a worse spot, Drew, I think, than both the Hornets and the Nets in terms of current player potential. Of course, we've referenced that the Nets, have some trade options there in terms of the players that they've got and the ceilings that those players have got. But the Wizards, there's guys like Alex Sarr and Kayshawn George and Bilal Coulibaly kicking around. Bilal's not necessarily made the leap that a lot of people expected him to make in his second year in the NBA. But I have to be honest, Drew, from like a personal perspective, I really don't like this franchise, the Washington Wizards. I used to, in the John Wall, Bradley Beal backcourt days, they were an exciting franchise to watch, but I just feel like every move they've made since has been just an ugly one, and it feels like there's not much of a vibe or a soul in this franchise. And that's, I say this, like I love the Washington Mystics. The Washington Mystics are my WNBA team because I had a personal relationship with the previous head coach there, Eric Tebow, and I love Capital One Arena. I was there last season to watch Caitlin Clark's last regular season game. I love the city of DC, but the main thing I can think about this franchise now, Drew, is just free CJ McCollum. What did CJ McCollum do to deserve this?
Man, I mentioned at the top about obviously this segment today has forced us to watch teams that we wouldn't normally watch. And, saying that, I keep an eye on these teams. I don't go out my way to watch them. This is the only team on the list that I don't ever even go and look at the box score. And I will come out and be honest with that. And there's one reason to that, Josh. This is I think every fan will be able to relate to what I'm about to say. There's one team in every sports league, whether it's NFL, whether it's Premier League. you look at their court, you look at their jerseys, and they just put you off. Like I look at ever since MJ has been there, uh, it's something about that red and white striped ugly jersey. Something about inside the arena that's just dull to me. It doesn't pop, and it just ekes ill, and it won't allow me to watch them thoroughly for whatever reason. So yeah, I mean, and then the fans out there, they know what I'm talking about. And this team, yeah, you say free CJ McCollum. I mean, he's balling this year, um, but you got to look at the positive side because this is what the NBA needs. Like every team needs a CJ McCollum, especially these bad teams, because you mentioned it with Caron Butler and the rookie. I can't recall his name, but Caron Butler is right. There's a difference between shit talking and disrespect. And this is why, what I think has hurt the NBA is the lack of veterans in the locker room, and it's been mentioned in the media over the last week about the current CBA doesn't allow for those old vets to be in the locker room. But you got to have vets. You got to have vets to teach these young pups of how to be a professional. Like that is a skill set. It's not about scoring the ball, all these other things. Yes, it's important, but how you carry yourself, how you interview, all of these little things that you don't see are very important to pass down to the lower generation. So for CJ McCollum, you say, woe is me from your perspective, but I'm looking at the other side. It's good that he's with these young pups.
Absolutely, yeah, and I guess he, as a former chair of the Players Association, he maybe feels like he has a duty to lead some of these guys in the league, which takes us nicely onto our reasons to be cheerful because there is one guy on the Wizards who, as well as CJ McCollum, has been absolutely balling out this season, and that's Alex Sarr. There's questions around whether he's like a legit star or not. Of course, the former, I think he was number one pick, was he, or did Zachary Reese-Shea go first
Yeah,
in
Sarr was
that
two.
season?
Yeah,
Yeah.
Sarr was two.
And I knew it was sort of like a toss up between those guys. That was the very bad draft class, as everyone called it, off the back of the Wembanyama year. Their pick was meant to go to the Knicks this year, but it's protected 1 through 8, so it's most likely, barring some kind of miracle turnaround from the Wizards, that it will stick in Washington, and they'll get an extra one too. It's going to be most likely the one from OKC, so that will be rooted to that 30 spot. OKC will take the Clippers pick this year. It seems with all those pick swaps that are going on, the Clippers are a terrible basketball team. So Alex Sarr, is he legit, Drew?
I think we need a bigger sample size. He is much improved from last year.
Yeah.
I'll give him that. He really struggled. I mean, even remember in the summer league last year, like I think he went there was one game where he didn't score. He went 0 for 12 or something like that. He struggled out the box. And I mean, it's understandable because this is a big jump to the NBA. You see it with Cooper Flag. Like for these teenagers, it is a huge jump in athleticism and ability that these young guys got to adjust to. So, I mean, much needs to be seen. He does have, shot blocking ability. His offense needs to come along. He just needs more time. So I need more of a sample size. So I mean, the Wizards right now are at 3-16, and you saying they're top 7 protected.
Top 8 protected.
Top 8. So they need
fine.
to keep losing. I mean, they were on a 14 game losing streak. They were, doing the right thing, but they won 2 out of 3. So I'm a little bit worried now. You talk about the positives throughout the whole team is the 3-point percentage has improved. Last year they were 29th. They've risen that percentage to 4%. They're 37% now, which is 5th in the league. CJ McCollum, Bub Carrington, Cody Kispert, Kaishan George, all shooting over 40%, which is great. And they got a nice young core. Sarr, Carrington, and George are all in their second year. So that's a nice little core that you can build around. And then you have the veteran leadership of Kispert and McCollum. They need this lottery. They need this lottery. They need AJ DeBansa. They need, one of these generational talents coming into the draft. And then let's see what they could do in the future.
Absolutely, and we're all for unorthodox routes to the NBA on this show, of course, with the European basketball influence. Drew being from the States but coming over to Europe to ply his trade, and Alex Sarr went through the NBL to get to the league as well. So a little trip to Australia for the Frenchman before coming to the NBA, which again is as you mentioned, Drew, is always going to be some adaptation through that. But speaking of teams going through a bit of an adaptation, Drew. The team that lost to the Washington Wizards last night, the Milwaukee Bucks, who at first I felt bad including on this list, to be honest, because I think those other three teams are so bad. Like, but obviously rebuilding teams. The Milwaukee Bucks aren't a rebuilding team; they're a team who is trying to win. And they are doing a very, very bad job of it. And on the pessimistic negative side, I mean, you saw it through the last sort of week or so of games, really, without Giannis. Giannis goes down. I don't think it was in the Lakers game, was it? It was the game after that. I'm always sort of like, whenever I look at the Bucks schedule, like the blowout was to the Lakers, and that's the one that Giannis played in. But then it's the next game that he went down, and who the name of that next team slips my mind. But Giannis goes down. This team was horrible. There were times in the past when Giannis went down for the Bucks, Drew, and obviously when any star player goes down, it's going to hinder your team. But it felt like with Middleton and even Portis as a third option guy stepping up to a second option guy, they were able to keep themselves afloat. But those days are long gone, and they got a stern reminder of that last night as Chris Middleton hit the game winner against them for Washington too. Like, you're looking at it now and thinking that Giannis's days in Wisconsin are surely numbered. It feels like the time is approaching that Giannis will leave this team, and that to me is a major, major reason to be very pessimistic about this franchise.
Yeah, they're stuck. It just brings the conversation back. All summer long, the talk was Giannis to New York. Giannis wants out. It died at the beginning of the season because the Bucks got off to an okayish start, but like you mentioned, so far they just fell off the surface of the earth. They're 9-13. If the season were to end today, they wouldn't even be in the play-in game. So you have to be concerned if you're the Bucks organization, if you're a Bucks fan, where do they go? And the issues, they always say the cream always rises to the top, and sooner or later you'll reveal yourself. This team has revealed themselves. All of the issues that were talked about in the offseason, which were what were the supporting cast of Giannis, and they tried to sell us Kyle Kuzma. They tried to sell us Gary Trent. They tried to sell us all these things, but it's it's beginning to reveal itself. Giannis is having a monster MVP season, but like you mentioned, Josh, without him, there's nothing else. They lost all 4 games when he was out, and here's the biggest stat about Giannis is that, they are 21 points per 100 possessions better with him on the floor. They're a plus 9.5. So without him, that is a big difference. They're almost 10 points worse without him on the floor. It makes sense why they lost 4 games in a row. I think if you're the Bucks, you got some tough decisions to make. And for me, you look at the situation they're in. Remember the Dame Dollar situation. They're going to be paying him for the next 5 years. You got to start thinking about shipping them. The NBA right now is too talented across the board to depend on that one superstar. It's now changed to you kind of need 2 superstars, and you need like 8 great players. That one guy to take you to the promised land is just not going to get it done anymore. Giannis is obviously a generational talent. He's a superstar, but his supporting cast isn't even close to good enough. So I think if you're the Bucks, you got to start looking at flipping Giannis and bringing in assets, which you would like to think you can bag you 4 first-round picks for Giannis and some younger talent. But right now, this as the roster's constructed, it's not going anywhere, even in the dire East.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of reasons to be cheerful, again, it feels like it's caveated with if you're a fan of this franchise, the franchise have not made good roster moves for a good few years now. But Giannis is back, at least in the short term, as me and Drew reference there. There may be a trade on the horizon, but for now he is back. He plays for the Milwaukee Bucks still, and he is having an an MVP type season too. The roster isn't actually that bad on paper if you look at it and look at the
Yeah.
names at least. Just, I guess, possibly, like you've referenced there, Drew, a few too many mercurial talents in terms of those individuals, like Kyle Kuzma and Gary Trent Jr. are guys who are capable of being, bucket getters especially, but they're also guys who can go and have nights where, they are 0 for 12 or something along those lines. And then you've got Ryan Rollins, who's come out of nowhere, really, having been waived by the Warriors once upon a time to hoop his face off. I've put on the agenda here. He's getting 17.9 points per game on 48, 40, and 78 splits. And I guess possibly showing that this strategy that the Milwaukee Bucks have of trying to rehab almost mercurial castaway guys has got some reward.
You use a term there that jumped out to me. Castaways. There's a reason why they're castaways. You look at Kevin Porter, who had 30 points last night and outscored Giannis. And I tried to look it up, but I couldn't find it. I was curious. So if one of our listeners is out there, I would love to know how many games this season that Giannis has played that a teammate has outscored him. I would not be surprised if last night was the first time. But Kevin Porter, he played for your Clippers last year. 2 years ago, he was in Europe. He was in Europe for a reason. He played for my Rockets. These are castaway players. In the NBA, you need bona fide NBA level talent. These are guys that are getting second and third chances, and it's just not going to get it done. And just to piggyback on the castaway term analogy that you use, these guys had an opportunity, but it's very clear that they're not the guys. Giannis has 168 field goals made. When he's on the court, his teammates have a combined 120. He's outscoring the other four guys on the court over the course of the
Crazy.
season. That's it right there. That's my mic drop situation. But then also the biggest issue with this team is because they had a lot of close games. They were close last night. Even when I covered them when they played the Rockets, they just can't finish games. They can't close games. I'm sure they're probably one of the worst clutch teams in the league, and a big reason for that is Giannis, the free throw shooting. He was 6 for 11 last night, and when you can't shoot free throws, you're going to have the ball in your hands as much as he does. You got to knock him down, and that's a reason why they have dropped a lot of close matches so far this season.
Absolutely, and especially with Giannis's style of basketball, really, where it's, get to the paint or die trying. And I think part of the reason the free throw thing has been so stark is because Giannis is actually very good at getting to the line. He's just not so good and a little slow when he does get there, considering
Very
he's a very
slow.
quick basketball player. Um, well, that brings us to the end, at least, of our ugly stepsisters roundup there. Apologies to the Milwaukee Bucks, or maybe not. Sorry, not sorry. The next two episodes are going to feature any of these six teams. So the Celtics, the Nuggets, the Timberwolves, the New York Knicks, the Orlando Magic, and the Sacramento Kings are the teams that we've not covered in any great depth so far. I may just split that into East and West, Drew, because obviously there's three from the East, three from the West there, but we'll see if any other narratives present themselves over the next 2 weeks. The Kings, better hope they do for the sake of that West episode. Otherwise, it's going to be very top heavy when we talk about the Nuggets and Timberwolves, and then talk about the poor Sacramento Kings. But we'll spare them for now, Drew. We'll move on to our understated stories of this week. Do you want to take the rock first for this one?
Yeah, most definitely. I'm going to kick you off with, and I just need to bring these stats up, is right now it's Cooper Flag. Obviously, you talked about Kanapo. He's, top of the rookie ladder. But Cooper Flag is slowly but surely starting to come into his own. I'm sure you witnessed that against your Clippers the other night. The Dallas Mavericks have had back-to-back wins. Cooper Flag had a career high on Saturday or Sunday in L.A. against the Clippers, 35 points. A lot of his slow start was due to the fact of him playing point guard. So let's make sure that the fans out there are aware of that. And the point guard position is the toughest position in at any level, especially when you're not a natural. That's not your natural position. And so he's had to go from being a scorer to basically running an NBA offense. Since they've inserted, the point guard into play, he's been much better. I'm just looking at the stats here. His first 10 games, he was averaging 13.9 points, 7 rebounds, 3 assists, and shooting 40%. The last 10 games, and these 10 games have been with the point guard in place, he's averaging 20 points, 7 rebounds, 4 assists, and shooting 51% from the field. The three ball is still deserting him, but the same thing happened at Duke. He came out the gate shooting very poorly, but then the second half of the season, his 3 ball picked up. So if his 3 ball can come to the party, watch out. But he's proven why he was the number 1 pick, why everyone was so high on him, why he's a generational talent. He is a very unique rookie who really processes the game. Sometimes you want him to shoot more, you want him to do more, but he constantly makes the right reads, and he's starting to learn the NBA game. So keep your eyes out. The Cooper flag, shout out to the
Yeah,
young fella.
absolutely. Absolutely. It felt like for a little time there he maybe was going to let the crown slip on the Kia rookie ladder this season going into rookie of the year. There's still a lot of time, still a lot of basketball to be played. I would like to see him usurped because I always like a bit of an underdog story, Drew, but it's good to see the young fella hooping now, absolutely. I'm going to move on with my understated story to the Atlanta Hawks. We covered them, Drew, a little bit when you talked about your experience of watching them at Intuit Dome, courtesy of tickets given by Coach Ryan Schmidt. So I just wanted to highlight them a little more after watching their win against the Sixers the other night. Nickeil Alexander-Walker is playing a little bit like someone he may be related to, his cousin Shai Gilgeous-Alexander. He's been filling in for the absent Trae Young at point guard, but with the benefit of being a much better defender. And Nickeil has been balling, like he has been scoring on a level that I don't think anybody really thought of for Nickeil Alexander-Walker. I'm going to try and get the stats up here. He scored under 26, I think it was, in last night's game. He's got 20.4 points so far on average, with shooting splits of 47, 39, and 86. Averaging 3.4 rebounds, 3.6 assists, and a steal a game as well. So, as I say, able to put it together on both sides of the ball. Shout out to Nickeil Alexander-Walker because I think he started to show himself as a legit NBA prospect last season, really, which seems strange to say. He's 27 years old now. He's someone who is a little bit more of a vet in this league, in terms of age, if not in terms of experience. But being on that Timberwolves roster last season was where I think he started to show, he had real NBA chops, particularly on the defensive end. He was a key part of those schemes, really, for the Minnesota Timberwolves defensively. But I think it's always harder when you're known as like a defense first guy to then turn that into offense and put it together on a consistent basis. And at some point Trae Young will come back, and Nickeil, I'm sure, will relinquish duties of point guard from there. But he may have just earned himself a bag from somewhere else. He'll probably earn himself ball handling duties from somewhere else if it's not the Atlanta Hawks. If the Atlanta Hawks decide to blow it up, Nickeil could quite well find himself on another team if Trae does get traded this season. So yeah, shout out to Nickeil Alexander-Walker, really putting it together this season. Shall I start off on bold predictions then, Drew?
Yeah, go ahead. And just to piggyback off of that understated story, he also signed with Converse. So shout out to him. After waiting in line for 12 hours for his cousin shoe
That was cool.
release, and now he gets to join the family. So shout out to him.
Absolutely, yeah. Well, in terms of our bold predictions, my prediction fell completely flat last week. I'm going to stop making homer predictions. That's going to be my New Year's resolution because the Lakers strolled past both the Clippers and the Mavericks last week, and are currently on a 7-game winning streak. So that train shows no signs of slowing down. Thank you very much, Nico Harrison, for your contributions to LA basketball. Drew's was much stronger than mine. Donovan Mitchell didn't win Eastern Conference Player of the Week or average 38 as Drew predicted. I think it was closer to 26. in the end. But Drew did also say within that, I went back and listened to give some respect to Drew. He said he'd go off in that NBA Cup game they played on Friday against the Hawks, and he did. He scored 42 in that game. So shout out to Donovan Mitchell for his contributions this season. As a whole, if only Evan Mobley would come to the party with him a little bit more. I feel a little bit sorry for Evan Mobley because Jarrett Allen's been injured, so there's more defensive onus on him. But that leap that people are expecting Evan Mobley to make, he's still not quite made it this season. So that will definitely help Donovan Mitchell out if he could. But I've been a little bit down on the Bucks this episode, Drew. So I'm going to turn the tables around for them a little bit. I mean, they didn't really help me out last night in terms of this, but I'm going to say they bounce back in a big way now that Giannis is back this week. I'm going to say that Washington Wizards defeat last night is going to have lit a fire underneath them. They've got the Pistons and the Sixers this week. The Sixers still look like they're a bit of an up and down basketball team. The Pistons are still flying, really, despite a couple of losses over recent weeks. They're still flying at the top of the Eastern Conference, but I'm going to say the Milwaukee Bucks and Giannis put it together this week. They beat the Pistons and the Sixers. These predictions have always got to be bold, so I'm going to say they do beat the Pistons and the Sixers this week. What do you think of that, Drew, and what's your prediction for the week?
Yeah, I like that. I just like. I mean, I wouldn't say that's bold. You got Giannis there, who can single handedly win you a game. So the urgency button is all the way up. So I would not be surprised to see that. But for mine, I'm going to go back to LA, and I'm going to correct you because the Lakers' 7-game winning streak was snapped last night by the Phoenix Sun, who came in and rolled over him. And shout out to Dylan Brooks.
Right.
Like, he is a culture setter wherever he goes. You think about what he did in Memphis. You think about what he did in Houston. And now look what he's doing for the Phoenix Suns. So shout out to him. But the Lakers are getting ready to go back to the East Coast. When they went on their East Coast swing early in the season, LeBron didn't travel. He was still dealing with that sciatica. So they're headed to Toronto on Thursday, Boston on Friday. So that's a back-to-back. And then they're in Philly on Sunday. I'm going to stay with LeBron James here. He's obviously not going to play, or he's not playing back-to-back. So I predict he plays Thursday, but he doesn't play Friday. So he's only going to play 2 games on his East Coast swing. But I'm predicting right here that the 1,200 games or whatever LeBron has had with the 10-point streak is going to be wrapped up. It was almost wrapped up last night. He was playing in mop-up minutes, chasing, and he hit a dagger 3 to get it, and then he was subbed out for Bronny James. And that didn't sit well with me, with you chasing points, chasing history. And I'm a firm believer that the basketball gods, sometimes they will reward you, but sometimes they will put you in your place. The basketball gods will put LeBron in his place for chasing that double-digit streak that he has going on since 2003. It's coming to an end either in Toronto or Sunday in Philly. That is my bold prediction.
Oh, tell you what, a tough one this week from you, Drew. The new era of NBA basketball is truly here if we're going at the king like that. Yeah, I mean, I like the prediction purely from the point of view of like I'm happy to watch the Lakers lose lots of games of basketball, and if LeBron's not scoring more than 10 points, it means they're more likely to lose games of basketball. But I'm not sure I can go along with that. I think surely LeBron is gonna come to the party. Surely there's enough between the millions of assists that Luka Doncic always seems to get night after night. Thanks again, Nico Harrison, for your contributions to LA basketball for that. That surely there's a couple of dishes in there. LeBron gets a couple of cuts to the basket. The attention is all on Luka and Austin Reeves this season. A couple of teams who have been good defensively in the Raptors and the Celtics, and even the Sixers, I guess. There, I'm expecting that LeBron keeps that streak alive. Sorry to poo-poo your prediction, Drew, but let us know what you think. If you have any bold predictions of your own, let us know what you think of our predictions. But that does bring us to the end of the episode. So all that's left for me to do is to say, Drew, lead us out.
And by leading us out, I got to, clean up some things from the last episode. I was discussing the NBA Cup, and I mentioned that there are 3 teams from the Eastern and Western Conference that make it on to the quarterfinals, and there are 2 wild cards. However, I made a mistake there. There's only one wild card, so there's 4 teams from each conference, which makes it, 8 teams to the quarterfinals, which begin next week. So we will be touching on that, giving our predictions as well of who we will see in Vegas. I'm really looking forward to that. But in the meantime, it's December. One of my favorite times of year, Christmas. Santa Claus is on the way. And my wish list, my one thing on the wish list is for you to go drop us a comment, drop us a like, subscribe, and tell a friend to tell a friend about the podcast. And we appreciate you. Thank you, everyone out there, as usual, for tuning in. Thank you for your time. And again, Josh and I will come back at you. New facts, new bold predictions next week. Peace out, everybody.